Okay, welcome, and we'll call to order the Pinehurst Village Council meeting for June 10th, 2025. So as our custom, we'll begin with an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. The invocation will be by Mr. David Kimsey, a member of the Stake High Council of the Fayetteville, North Carolina West Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Jethro Kimsey, who is he's 9 years old in Aberdeen Elementary School, and he's obviously a member in good standing of, I think, a Cub Scout group. So congratulations. Mr. Kimsey, please come up, and the microphone is there, and please lead us in invocation.
Please bow your heads and pray with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this beautiful day and for the blessing of being able to live in America and North Carolina and Pinehurst and the surrounding area. We thank Thee for the leaders in our community and the volunteers and those who give of themselves around here. We thank Thee for the health and the safety in our community and pray for those that are infirm to be healed. We thank Thee that we have been taught to do what is right, and we thank Thee for our families and the values that they teach us. Heavenly Father, we ask Thee to please bless us. We ask Thee to please bless our nation, that it will be strong and that it will lead with character and devotion that we've been taught. Please bless those in western North Carolina who've been affected by Hurricane Helene, and please bless those of us here in Pinehurst and the Sandhills, that we will be willing to help those around us, and that we will touch the hearts of those around us through our commitment to the community. We ask Thee to please bless our community leaders and especially our teachers and educators, first responders, and the military that are so close to our hearts. Heavenly Father, we ask that the decisions that we make will be led by inspiration and Thy guidance, and ask Thee to help us to open our hearts and our hands to those around us, that we can create a place where our children can grow in safety and confidence, and where we can feel free to exemplify the character and values established by Thy Son, to love one another, to care for the poor, and to reach out to the brokenhearted. We ask Thee to please bless us with love and compassion and the courage to do what is right. And we also ask for straight fairways and well-kept greens. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Jethro, come on up and you lead us in the pledge. Please rise. Flag. Go right ahead. Allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I just want to note that Councilman Jack Farrell is not with us this evening. He had a long time family commitment, so he will not be joining us. Let us go to reports. We'll begin with the village manager. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the 4th of July activities coming up. On the 3rd, we'll have our fireworks, and then on the 4th in the morning, 9 a.m. is our parade. If anyone's interested in applying to be a part of the parade, we're accepting applications until the 21st. Also, we are working on our downtown parking. We're switching that to timed parking at the beginning of the new fiscal year in July. We are installing signs. Those will be going up soon. We've hired the employee, but just trying to get the word out there that will be coming, and we will advertise that and make it well known in the downtown area. So that's all I have today.
Okay, thank you. I have a few items to report. During the past couple of weeks, one, I attended the community meeting of Pinehurst number 6, and they had their usual robust turnout. They are prepared and anxious for the sidewalk construction that's going on. So we're glad that that's on schedule. Secondly, I attended the Moore County Historical Association. They had an annual meeting, and we're part of Moore County, and they went over a little bit of historical things that have been going on and have happened in the past and reminded us. And there were some residents of Pinehurst who were there also, but people from elsewhere in the county. It's a worthwhile organization for those of you who have an interest in history. Last week, I attended the groundbreaking for the First Baptist Church of Pinehurst on Highway 211. They are expanding their campus, and they're going to be building additional couple of buildings, including a large gymnasium. So they intend to open that a year from now. So we look forward to that. And then yesterday morning, I attended the Moore County Economic Development Partnership, their monthly meeting. And there was a report from the one of the co-chairs of the Moore County Land Use Planning Committee that has been developing an overall plan for Moore County, updating the previous one. And Mr. Larry Best, the person who walked us through the presentation and all, he made a couple of comments. One, he said that sprawl is the worst thing that could happen to Moore County. And then he complimented Pinehurst on the way we've been managing sprawl through our zoning and other efforts. So I thought that was a nice compliment. And lastly, I happened to stop in at the Welcome Center in the theater building downtown. And lo and behold, I didn't know this, they sell those wine bags. You know, you put a bottle of wine in as a gift, and you find them around Christmas time a lot, but this was a one with Pinehurst on it. So you never know what you're going to find in there that might be very practical and useful. So I got a few of those. And that's all I have to report. Dr. Morgan.
Thank you. Just a couple things. The CPRC board meeting occurred a couple weeks ago, right after our last meeting. Not a lot of it pertaining to us. They're still struggling on budget and funding. Again, that should not affect us. There was a presentation from Cody Morris at the Keenan Institute, and the Keenan Institute is a nonpartisan economic institute that evaluates different economic trends, and he gave a long briefing on there. Synopsis is that we're doing pretty well in southern part of Moore County, and no real takeaways from that. I will continue to be part of the CPRC meetings as they continue on. Other than that, as I mentioned last time, we're a few days away from the Army's 250th birthday, and being that we are right beside the largest military base in the free world, we'll probably have some stuff that occurs and around, and some pretty neat things that'll happen. So, all I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That is a significant event that's coming up, and
14 June.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Councilman Taylor.
I attended the SMPO technical committee meeting, a week ago Tuesday, and I guess we're going to be talking about this later in our work session, but as they work toward their goal at the end of next year of having a comprehensive transportation plan, one of the things that they need to do is, from all of the municipalities in the county, and as well as in the case of the SMPO, those in the SMPO, produce population estimates according to these blocks called Transportation Analysis Zones, or TAZs. And I think we're going to be discussing that a little bit later today, but the interim executive director, Scott Walston, outlined the process and kind of how these zones are drawn up. The interesting point to me, I think, is that not all of the zones align with municipal boundaries. So some include areas that could be partly in Pinehurst and partly in, hypothetically, Aberdeen or Southern Pines, or could be contiguous to county-controlled land, unincorporated land. And the forecasting is done on a number of things, not just population, but employment and what have you. So that'll be something which I know our staff will be working on from the standpoint of Pinehurst and feed it into the SMPO.
Yeah, that'll be good for our discussion later. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes.
I think that's it for me.
Okay. Barbara Ficklin. No report, okay. Let us move on then to item 4 on the agenda, and that's the approval of the consent agenda. We have all items that are listed on this agenda are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the village council. We'll be approving the village council meeting minutes from the regular meeting of May 27th and the work session of May 27th and the budget amendments report. So, is there, before we go to that, I may have one question. On the budget amendments report, is there anything of significance that we should point out? Of anything out of the ordinary?
No, nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay, I didn't think so. All right, on that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion adopted. And we will now go on to proclamation. We have a proclamation which I will read regarding Flag Day that's coming up, and it also, of course, touches on the 250th birthday of the United States Army, which Dr. Morgan mentioned a few moments ago. So I'll read this, Doug, unless you have anything else you want to
Take
read
it
up to
away.
it. Okay. Whereas the village of Pinehurst recognizes the importance of commemorating the date in 1777 when the Second Continental Congress approved the design for the first national flag, and the date in 1775 when the United States Army was officially established. And whereas on June 14th, 1777, the Second Continental Congress adopted the United States flag and established the 13 alternating red and white stripes and 13 white stars on a blue field pattern. And whereas in 1916, President Wilson proclaimed June 14th as Flag Day, and in 1949, Flag Day was officially recognized by the United States Congress. And whereas Flag Day is a day of renewal and reminder of this nation's devotion to our, quote, great mission of liberty and justice, end quote, and of the rededication of ourselves to a, quote, America which no man can corrupt, no influence draw away from its ideals, no force divide against itself, end quote. And whereas on June 14th, 1775, the Continental Congress passed a resolution adopting the New England Army of Observation, or Continental Army, the first national institution for the defense of American liberty. And whereas on July 4th, 1776, with the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Army and the militia in service to the Continental Congress became known as the Army of the United States. And whereas the village of Pinehurst encourages all citizens to commemorate the adoption of our national flag by displaying the flag and honoring its significance as a symbol of our great nation. And whereas the village of Pinehurst encourages all citizens to commemorate the establishment of the United States Army by participating in celebrations honoring the legacy of service and sacrifice of this important institution and cornerstone in the defense of our nation. Therefore, I, the Mayor of Pinehurst, do hereby proclaim June 14th, 2025 as Flag Day and the 250th birthday of the United States Army in the village of Pinehurst. So be it. That is our proclamation. Thank you. Happy birthday to the United States Army, among other things. 250 years going strong. Okay, let us go on to item, we're at the public comments portion of our discussion. No one has indicated they have a public comment to make. If anyone at this point would like to, they're free to come forward now. Seeing nobody, we will move on from the public comments portion. And we will go to item 7, which is resolutions. Resolution A. This is consideration of Resolution 25-18, the reappointment of Ms. Carol Henry to the Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustments. She's a representative of the extraterritorial jurisdiction representative. And as it says, it's a reappointment. We've obviously been through this before, so Carol's re-upping. I will say I've observed Carol, and she's a productive member of our Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of Adjustment. So if anyone has any comments, I don't see if Carol's here. I don't reckon, she's not.
Yeah, she's not here.
Okay, if there's anybody has any other comments, otherwise we can entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 25-18, reappointment of Ms. Carol Henry to the Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustment as the extraterritorial jurisdiction representative, effective September 1, 2025, to serve at the pleasure of the council until the end of her term, August 31, 2027.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Let's go to Resolution B. This is Resolution 25-19, the appointment of Mr. Randy Gould to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee in Old Town West. Some of you may recall that Mr. Gould actually came before this council several months ago and gave us an overview of the water issue, for lack of a better title, here in Moore County. And he's recently retired from Moore County, where he was sort of known as the water expert in Czar. And so it turns out he lives here and be, I think, a terrific addition to our Neighborhood Advisory Committee. Anybody have any other comments? Or Doug, do you know Randy?
Yep, I know Randy pretty well, and he apologizes he couldn't be here tonight, but we felt that, the council has met him and is aware of him, so we decided to move forward anyway. But yeah, I think Randy will make a great representative on the NAC. He will bring a lot of expertise and will be able to share some of his knowledge with us. I think he's really bored after working for the county for many years and needs something to do.
I think it's great that we're filling the position. I think that post has been vacant for a while.
It's been a few months, yeah.
I would echo, Doug, your comments that I think he will bring certainly a unique perspective and something that we'll be able to benefit from.
Okay.
I move to approve Resolution 25-19, appointment of Mr. Randy Gould to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, Old Town West, effective June 10th, 2025, to serve at the pleasure of the council until the end of his term on June 30th, 2027.
Motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion adopted. We'll look forward to Randy's participation. Now we're going to Resolution 25-16, which is the adopting and amending certain financial policies. So, Dana, I see you approaching. Doug, do you want to set anything up, or you can walk us through these?
I will let Dana walk you through with these policies.
Okay.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is the culmination of something we've talked about at a few points over the last several months. I've kind of done a complete inventory and review of all the financial policies of the village, and I identified 3 that I recommend amendments for, which the village manager has reviewed, and he approves of recommending those changes as well, and also the 4 new policies that we had reviewed back in February. I did summarize the changes in the memo here. If we could, I'll just quickly walk through those. So the key recommendations that I'm making in the amendments to the existing policies, the first one in the purchasing and contracting policy, I recommend increasing our purchase order threshold from $1,000 to $2,000. This would remove the need for staff to prepare the purchase order request form and for financial services to enter and print and process purchase orders for approximately 100 or more POs over the course of a fiscal year. that dollar amount and the types of purchases that that is for, I do not have concern that it will then, cause departments to go over budget or be, circumventing any of our purchasing policies. That only changes the threshold over which they need to have a purchase order issued. It does not change when they're required to get quotes or have price competition in the process, in the policy. Our staff is very responsible with their purchasing, and it's something that we can monitor as well to see if we, just like we do now, if we feel anything is potentially being, circumvented or abused. But this is a recommendation where I feel the time that will be saved, both on the departments that are doing the buying and financial services where we are processing the paper and making the entries in the accounting system, I think it is a worthwhile trade-off in terms of the benefits that we'll gain in terms of staff time.
And just one question on that.
Yes.
In your description, you used the phrase encumber. That the implication was if a purchase order is cut, then those funds are encumbered. But the flow through ultimately to the budget, as we track it, as you track it, and as you report to us through the year, doesn't really change. So I think of encumbrance in terms of a council committing funds that other councils may have to abide by for multi-year projects, but it's really sort of different, isn't it?
Yes, so encumbered in this context is when we have a purchase order in the system, it shows as an encumbrance, meaning those budget dollars are kind of earmarked, if you will, or they are already committed to purchase the item with that purchase or whatever that purchase order is for. It gives us a better view of how much available budget there is to then be approving the next PO and the next PO or the next purchase, the next contract that may come across. And so it also helps the department heads and others who monitor their budgets to see what do we have left before they even make a request to make a purchase. At the end of the year, those purchase orders are closed out, and then we re-encumber them with the reappropriation in the following fiscal year, only if it's for things we have not yet received.
And I think you commented somewhere that you've also reviewed these with our auditor, and our auditors have no issues with this.
Correct, yes. Yes, for this one and the capital assets threshold change, yes. All right, so within the capital assets policy, there's 2 recommended changes. And I should just also note, overall, throughout all of the policies, there were some changes to wording to make them maybe more reflective of our current process. Some of the policies have what I felt were overly specific and detailed descriptions of what is more of our operating procedures, step by step of this is what you do to process something. I eliminated some of that if it was not really more at the policy level that guides the decision making, as opposed to a step-by-step procedural element where I think that belongs more in our departmental procedures as opposed to in a policy. So there were other changes. These are the most substantive changes that I'm recommending.
Quick question there. This is going forward.
Yes.
Prospectively. What happens to the previous situations? How do they show up on our books, or how does that work?
With regard to the purchase orders?
Yes.
Yes.
No, with this, the land improvements classification of
Yes.
assets.
So in the capital asset policy, the first change I made was adding a definition of land improvements. It's a classification that we use in our fixed asset system in our accounting software, but it was not separately defined in the policy. By adding this, it will provide more clarity and consistency for a going forward basis to make sure that the categories basically in the policy match up directly with the categories we're using in our accounting system, so that there's a clear definition of what goes in each classification. That's a definition that we have been using. It just was not kind of specifically in the policy. But since we've been using that definition on the accounting system side of things, I wanted it to also match the definition in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Then the second recommendation in the capital assets policy is to increase the capitalization threshold for the intangible right-to-use assets. These are the leases and the software subscriptions that I come to you periodically to do budget amendments for. It has to do with those. I recommend increasing the threshold for those from 5,000, which is our capitalization threshold for all of our other assets, tangible things, equipment, buildings, et cetera, to $50,000. It is a large increase, but it is not out of line with what other governments are adopting. Some are going up to $100,000. Software in particular is one where it kind of always has had a higher capitalization threshold than maybe your tangible assets. I did do an analysis of if we only did 50,000, anything over $50,000, what's the impact to make sure we're not removing too much from our assets and liabilities related to the leases and software subscriptions based on the GASB standards. And the impact overall to the financial statements is pretty minimal. And this is one that I did discuss with the auditors, and they are comfortable with this change.
Two follow-ups on this. One, this does not apply or does not cover the leases we will be entering into with our new arrangement with Enterprise, correct?
It does. I would anticipate those to be over 50,000 anyway for the vehicles. And even if they are not, if it's close, and I believe I mentioned that in here, yes. That vehicle leasing program is certainly significant in the aggregate. So that would be one where even if a particular vehicle, if the initial asset value that's calculated based on the present value of the payments and that lease agreement was $47,000, I would say that we would need to capitalize that just to be consistent with how we're treating all of the other vehicle leases. But I would expect most of them to be over 50,000.
And I think you mentioned in that for those subscriptions under 50,000, this will no longer result in us needing to carry these as debt,
Correct.
quote unquote debt.
Correct.
Only the ones over 50,000.
Yes. Yes, so from that operating expenditure impact, it's really no net change, but we would be reporting them just in the operating expenditures and not as debt service. Yes, so we would still be spending the same amount, just reporting it differently. But I think it simplifies the reporting and aligns it more with the way people kind of logically think about the payments for these software subscriptions.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And finally, we have amendments to the personal property disposition policy. The North Carolina general statutes allow council to delegate the authority to dispose of surplus personal property, not real property, so not land or buildings, things like that. But this would be equipment, essentially anything other than real property, up to $30,000. So the statute allows council to delegate that authority up to $30,000. In the past, council has delegated that authority to the village manager up to $10,000. That's based on what we estimate to be the market value or the fair value of that piece of equipment, that piece of property. We're recommending increasing that threshold to $20,000. So that would basically just allow the village manager to determine whether or not we surplus, or and also the method by which we do it, up to $20,000 in estimated value. So we're still below the statutory limit of $30,000. Anything over $20,000 would come to council for approval.
And one reason Dana mentions it in her memo is that as we are leasing vehicles and we are planning on ending those leases earlier and getting more value out of them, we don't want to be coming back to you every single time we have to sell a vehicle. So hopefully we don't have too many over the 20 to 30,000 range, but we think 20,000 is an appropriate number.
Yes. And even for one of the examples I have in the memo is even our garbage trucks. The most recent sale that we had of a garbage truck, the GovDeals auction amount came in at just over $10,000. At the based on what we estimated the market value to be, we thought it would be less, but it came in at just over. So in the future, we probably would need to even bring, the garbage truck sales to council, knowing that we've now gotten $10,000 for a garbage truck. That would need to come to council for us to be able to post it in an online auction going forward, as opposed to us kind of continuing the same process for a routine sale like that.
In our discussions with Enterprise, did they indicate, did they have any distribution of expected sales, or is it just too hard to know? How many of vehicles they might be selling for, more than 10 or whatever?
Dana, you probably have a better feel for that.
Yeah, I can look it up to be more specific, but I know in the examples that they provided to us, it was usually maybe like 15 to 18,000 from the few that I remember, but we could get more information on that from them.
If you wanted to make it easy and just go up to 30,000, we could also do that, but it's not a big deal.
Another discussion. Okay. Any more comments or questions, John?
Yep.
Else, John?
Dan, do you have more to, one sort of overarching, not related to one of the specific?
Yeah. I think then my final comments were just going to be these other four: the budget and financial planning, accounting and financial reporting, debt and donations were the new policies that we had discussed previously. Other than the few changes that were discussed at the work session for the debt policy, they are all the same as what was discussed at the work session meetings where we went over those drafts. And overall, we would make these new policy updates effective July 1st so that it coincides with the new fiscal year, particularly since we have purchase order thresholds, asset thresholds changing. It provides a better cutoff for us in terms of making that transition so that each fiscal year is done under the same policies.
I have just two quick questions. There are two of the policies that were last updated in 211 and 212, the write-off and the fees and charges policy. Are they, they're just fine as they are? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes,
Okay.
that was the conclusion that I made. They're two of the more brief policies, and really the substance of them still applies. The fees and charges policy, we adopt the updated fees and charges schedule each year, and that is based on what's dictated in the fees and charges policy. And the other elements to that policy really still apply. I didn't feel the need to bring it to council just to update the style of the header, which is pretty much the only thing that needed to be changed on that. So,
Okay. That's my questions. Barb, do you have anything?
Oh, I would just like to say thank you for taking the time and energy to put all of this together. It's really important to have it, and I know must have been a huge task, so thank you.
you're welcome.
I was going to ask, were you just sitting in your office one day and you said, gee, I think what prompted this review, which I think is extraordinary?
I believe it probably started with noticing that there was some outdated language, I think maybe first in the investment policy. I don't remember which one kind of triggered it, but this type of comprehensive review of all the policies was last done in 2017. So it has been a number of years, and kind of a lot has changed, wanting to look at thresholds, things like that, given the current environment. The amount of inflation that there even has been since then can somewhat affect what thresholds may be appropriate. So I think that's really what kind of drove it, and it just became a goal for me to go through them in one fell swoop and kind of look at it comprehensively, as opposed to just keep doing it piecemeal as things came up.
Yeah, this was one of Dana's personal goals for the year, so now she'll be able to check off that she exceeded expectations.
Well, anything else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 25-16, adopting and amending certain financial policies consisting of amendments to the purchasing and contracting policy, the capital assets policy and the personnel property disposition policy, and adoption of the budget and financial planning policy, the accounting and financial reporting policy, the debt policy, and the donations policy.
You have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion adopted. Thank you, Dana, for your effort, and well done.
And you're not done with me yet.
We are now on to 2517, to commit fund balance for future capital. That's item D on the agenda. So go right ahead.
Yes, so this resolution comes to council each year in June. This resolution is how council can choose to commit fund balance, excess fund balance for capital in accordance with our fund balance policy. We do not know the dollar amount of this yet. That is calculated while we are preparing the audit in August. Late July, early August is when we determine what that dollar amount is that meets the criteria in the policy. It's whatever's in excess of 40% of actual general fund expenditures in our unassigned fund balance number for the general fund. This does not mean that you are committing it for any specific project. It is just that showing that generally council is committing to use that portion of fund balance for capital in the future, which within our 5-year forecast, there's certainly sufficient capital expenditures between the library and other items that would, utilize that if they come to fruition.
One question, it's stated that that there should be no instance that the amount of the fund balance committed for future capital needs cause the unassigned general fund balance to fall below 15%. How is that selected?
So there's multiple layers to the calculation. Yep, so we determine what is that 15% of expenditures floor. That's the lowest our unassigned fund balance can go. And we determine what is the 40%, what's the over 40% threshold, and basically whichever is higher is the one that we end up committing.
It seems rather far from the 30%. That's what detracted my attention.
It's based on different measures of expenditures. The 30% is based on the budgeted expenditures, and these are based on the actual expenditures. It makes it confusing at times to consider the different provisions of our policy because or even compare us to other governments because we use a different base for those different measures.
I may be misremembering from the training Barb and I did after we were first elected, but isn't 15 also a level at which the state review board begins to be concerned about fiscal solvency, if you will?
There's not a specific dollar or percentage threshold that the local government commission gives.
LCM, yeah.
It can be one indicator, but my understanding is typically it requires a few red flags for the local government commission to be asking additional questions. That may be one, if they see your fund balance, your unassigned fund balance is dropping, particularly a trend over time. But there's not one hard and fast bright line that would indicate they need to, do a further review or come look at anything.
Other questions for Dana on this topic? Dr. Morgan? No? Mr. Taylor, anything else? Okay, well then we can entertain a motion here.
I move to approve Resolution 25-17 to commit fund balance for future capital, committing the amount of general fund balance that exceeds 40% of actual general fund expenditures as of June 30th, 2025, as reported in the annual comprehensive financial report for future capital needs.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we will go on to item 7E. Doug, do you want to
Yeah, I'll
get
walk us through
stop?
this a little bit. So we own a lot at 1775 Longleaf Drive. And we had interest by one of the neighbors who would like to purchase that lot, and he reached out to us. So we brought it before council, and we agreed to put it out to an auction. We held the auction from mid-May to early June. At the end date, June 4th, we had a kind of a run-up in the auction price, and so the final price, I believe, was $92,000?
93.
93,000, sorry, thank you. And so we had 24 registered bidders, about 16 active bidders, and we had, what I'm told, 4 bidders were really active up until the $80,000 range. So we did bring in a substantial amount of money through this auction, and I would recommend that council approve it and allow us to sell this lot to the highest bidder.
Okay. We've discussed this in the past, and this was a pleasant surprise about the amount of money we received on the bid of this piece of village property that was not being utilized. So I think that this has been a terrific exercise. We learned a lot about, one, the process of how to do this for some of us, and then also the bigger than anticipated financial reward to the village in this particular instance. And so we'll probably be looking at some of the other unused parcels of land that we have going downstream here to see if there are other ways to, because this property, if we approve this resolution, will be on our tax rolls. So it creates a source of income for the village, which is very good news.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Our village clerk has already started the process of reviewing vacant parcels that the village owns, and we're going through to see which ones might be available and to be declared surplus and put up for auction.
That's excellent.
Right. And yeah, any other comments from our colleagues? We went through this and in a meeting.
I echo all your terms that you mentioned there. It's an excellent process.
John, anything? Barb, you have any comments? Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2520, accepting the high bid for certain real property at public auction for the sale of the vacant lot at 1755 Long Lake Drive East, parcel ID number 000023723. Accept the high bid of $93,000 and authorize the village manager to execute the documents necessary to transfer the title to the property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Thank you. Well done. All those that were involved in the process. And now we have item 8, which is ordinances. And we have 2 in front of us. The first one is adopting the annual budget. And the second one is updating procedures for disposing of personal property. And that, why does that sound so familiar?
I think 8A is the budget.
Well, there's A and B.
Yeah, they're 2 separate ordinances, yeah.
I know, I understand that. I'm just saying that it sounded similar to what we just did a little while ago with the policy changes.
But different. So
But
we'll
different.
cover that in just a second.
Okay, all right. As I read it out loud, it made me think. Okay, let us go to the adoption of the FY 2026 budget. Obviously, we've had various discussions on this, and we reached a decision in our last meeting pretty much. So there's really not much to do formally other than those who would like to make a comment, and I would, about this budget. This is a good budget that we've adopted as the Village of Pinehurst. This budget is actually $1 million less than the budget we adopted last year. And it's 8% less than the amended budget from last year. During the course of the year, we will occasionally have amendments to increase the budget. And so I think that's really speaks well for the village, the staff, and so forth. And I have some other things to say. Dana, do you have something you wanted to say about it, or?
I was just going to address the one key element of the ordinance that we did change compared to prior years regarding the delegation of authority for contracting to the village manager.
Okay.
So in previous years, the threshold, this is in section 7 on page 3 of the ordinance. If we can be easier if we look at it together. So section 7 deals with the delegation of authority to the village manager to be able to execute certain agreements. And these, the two elements that I changed, this one I feel is relatively minor. In item B, leases of normal and routine business equipment, I explicitly added "and vehicles." That way, it's very clear that the village manager has the authority to execute the enterprise vehicle lease agreements. And the item that we adjusted is item D. This threshold for consultant services, professional services, contracted services, and maintenance service agreements of up to $90,000. That was previously $50,000. The rationale for increasing that is really to streamline and it makes it consistent with the threshold that's used in item A for the purchase of apparatus, supplies, and materials where formal bids are not required by law. That state statutory threshold for apparatus, supplies, and materials is $90,000. So it would be consistent with that threshold. In looking at the types of contracts we have that are in that between $50,000 and $90,000 for those types of services that are listed in item D, it's typically our custodial contracts for cleaning village buildings. And I believe also the on-call engineering services is kind of right at that $50,000 threshold. So they are contracts that are pretty routine in nature, at least what we have currently, that falls within that threshold, between the $50,000 and $90,000 that we are recommending increasing it to.
I just have one comment on that. It sounds very logical, but for the last 3 budgets, it was always 50,000.
And probably even
And probably further
longer
before
than
that, but I just went back 3 years.
That's 50 years, well,
Okay.
until 1980, yeah.
Okay, it's 50,000. I do think it would have been wise for the council to have a little more discussion before we're facing it in an ordinance to vote on it. And so, but that's just my only point. This is what I consider somewhat of the type of strategic planning thing that we ought to bounce around. We probably would come to the same conclusion, probably adopt it. But so going forward, I just think it's wise that when something's going to change, which is significant change, going from 50 to 90, that it be something we discuss a little beforehand.
Yeah,
That's
so
my only comment.
it was actually a suggestion by council that
We
several
did
months
discuss
ago.
it. Yeah, we did discuss it.
Yeah, so that's why we put it in there, because it was suggested.
But we didn't discuss it the last meeting on the budget.
Nope, we didn't, and it's been a while, so,
Okay.
you know, we could have brought it back up, like, hey, we're also planning on doing this, but it wasn't our initiative on why we changed it.
Okay.
I meant to ask this by email just for clarification. What are on-call engineering services?
Yeah, so we have a contract with, right
McGill.
now the contract is with McGill Engineering. So if there are contracts or engineering services that Mike Gapke or another department needs, say it's for a stormwater improvement or maybe minor sidewalks, we can do it within that on-call services contract, up to $50,000.
So a stormwater main ruptures or something, and we need someone to come fix it now.
I mean,
putting this out to-
that's more of a repair, but yeah, if we're trying to design something because there is a problem and it's a minor project and but we do need an engineer to kind of design it, we can have McGill do it, and they might charge us $10,000 to do it. And that way we don't have, that way we have them on call and we don't have to bid out the project for multiple $10,000 projects throughout the year.
And again, just for clarification, how do you draw the line between that which you have to bid out and that which you can do under this contract?
Well, if it's under $50,000, it can be within that contract for a total throughout
Yes.
the year.
Yes,
So that contract is at 50.
that's the.
So
the
in some
cap, yeah.
sense, that's not really related to why we're going from 50 to 90, but it could increase at some point in the future.
Right. So in the past, that $50,000, we had several projects, and come May, we needed to do something else, and it was, $10,000. So we had to come back before the board to move it from 50 to 55.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Other comments on anything else related to this Section 7? I don't think we have any.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that. Great job to the staff, okay? Dana, you did a great job. Doug, your team did a great job here. Like the mayor mentioned, this is an excellent budget, and we have brought down the budget. And a lot of times people want to kick around government and say, okay, they're wasteful and not doing the job. This is an example of local government doing the job very well, okay? So be proud of yourselves, because you did take care of Pinehurst. We are providing the services that we need to. We're doing it with a very judicious eye, being a good steward of the taxpayer dollars. And we'd like to sit up here and look good on that, but the real work happens right down there in your offices. And so excellent job. Be proud of yourselves.
Thank you.
I would add parenthetically that although our approval is not binding, I think we did a lot of good work on the capital budget as well. We've not only brought down the potential future commitments, although some of them may reappear in the future, but that's been a collaborative effort also with staff, and I think we've done good work on that. So in addition to minding the store 1 year at a time, and probably we will outperform even this reduced budget, as typically has happened, I think we've made some good progress there as being stewards of the capital that we've been empowered to use, and yet looking at the longer-term needs of the village, which is something else we have to do.
Okay. Barb, did you have anything else? Okay. I'd just like to close reminding both my colleagues and the residents, well, this FY26 budget is a very good one. It's respectful of spending considerations that I was reminded literally this morning, going through news items on the internet, that the North Carolina insurance rates are increasing by an average of 5%. So it made me start thinking in my favorite topic, taxes. So I'd like to remind us all, and we should be reminded, that the village of Pinehurst's only way into the residents' pockets is through the property tax. That is what we really do when it comes to getting money, that authority we've been given by the state. All the other taxes that fall upon our residents are set in Raleigh. The income tax, the sales tax, the gas tax, the alcohol tax. I didn't know this, but it's the tax on a gallon of beer is 62 cents. While it's a dollar on wine, and then the sales tax is on top of that. The county sets the vehicle tax. There's a separate tax on lottery winnings, if there's anybody in here who's been rather lucky in the last year. Again, that's collected by the state. And if you ever study your utility bill, there's a 7% tax on that bill from Duke Energy. And of course, the county just recently doubled the occupancy tax, but that doesn't really affect us, except if we have too many guests arriving for a weekend and we need to get them a hotel room. They may have to pay a little more, but that's sort of besides the point. As I've sort of alluded to in the past, one of the things about our budget projections is that we actually project what our fund balance will be at the end of the year. And it's a pretty accurate projection, like most of the projections we make are pretty accurate. And it's projecting about 60%, which is a lot. It's above the 30%, which is our sort of guide. And that's policy we have in place. But it's a key reason that I believe that one of the things we need to watch in the future, as I want to do this year, is just how much taxes we're taking from our residents. Because I'm fond of saying that there are many people in the village who live on fixed income, but some are better fixed than others, and we need to keep those others in mind. So we have a very good budget, but we should always be cognizant of the amount of taxes that we, as the Village of Pinehurst Council, place on our residents, because we are the only ones who can place that on them. So, having said that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 25-09, adopting the FY 2026 annual budget.
A motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted unanimously. Thank you, Dana, for your work, and thank you, everybody, the staff who contributed to this also. Now we can go on to ordinance 2510.
All right, so this is a companion to the policy, the surplus personal property disposal policy. But that official threshold of 20,000 that we are recommending changing, it needs to also be updated in the ordinance that prescribes the procedures. This is kind of the official delegation of authority from council to the village manager, and it indicates very clearly what procedures need to be followed, which types of, which methods of sale are allowed, et cetera. So we need to, this hasn't changed other than updating the $10,000 threshold to $20,000. I have not changed any of the other elements of the ordinance that were there previously.
I guess I just have one observation. This makes sense to me. Is there any more money we want to give to the village manager to oversee? I mean, we have just been ratcheting up these numbers today. I say that facetiously. This all makes a lot of sense to me. I have no comments. Any comments?
I'd be more than happy to control even more money.
Okay, that's a good attitude. Okay,
I move to approve ordinance 25-10, updating the procedure for disposing of personal property, authorizing the village manager to dispose of surplus personal property valued at less than $20,000.
Second.
motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion adopted. Okay. New business, item 9, the solid waste contract for Lofton Garbage Services at CCNC for FY26. Mike Apke, go right ahead.
All right, good evening. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but we, as the village, contract out our solid waste services for trash, recycling, and solid waste services in CCNC. We have 2 contractors that can provide that service, Lofton Garbage Service and Becky's Rubbish. We do not stipulate who serves what houses. Residents within CCNC are free to choose either of the 2 contractors. So we have identical contracts with both. The value of Becky's contract, she services quite a few less houses than Lofton, and the value of her contract falls within Doug's authority to sign, but Lofton's exceeds Doug's authority to sign, even with the change you just made. So that's why I'm here to present that to you this evening. The contract renewal is for 1 year. It includes a CPI adjustment of 4.9%. We use the CPI index for water, sewer, and trash collection in the United States average, and Lofton has agreed to this adjustment. Every year before I come before you, we reach out to the HOA in CCNC to make sure we are getting good service, and we did that again, and the HOA responded that they have no issues with the service. And honestly, I cannot remember the last time I received a complaint about solid waste service from either contractor in CCNC. We get excellent service from both Lofton and Becky. Approximate value of Lofton's contract for FY26 would be $142,500. And staff recommends that we approve that and continue with them, with both contractors, into FY26.
Mike, would you mind reminding us how that price compares to what we pay for waste management?
It is about $3, so with the CPI adjustment in CCNC, it is $30.42 per month per house. And Pine Wild with Waste Management is $27.42 with their CPI adjustment. So it's about $3 more per house per month. However, Waste Management services 944 houses and Lofton services 378. So it's about a third of the house count. So I would expect a little higher rate just because of economies of scale.
Also, there was an email today about which gas we use in the contract. And Mike, I think you'd probably be okay with this, but if we just clarify, it's the diesel price at whatever gas station that is.
It is the diesel at the Speedway down on Highway 5, and we use that because, I don't know, that's what we've always done.
They have good Slurpees there? I don't know.
What's that?
Yeah, they have good Slurpees. Yeah.
There you go. And we can add that to the contract to clarify that it's the diesel price. It has not been an issue in the time that I have been here, but it just says fuel in there, so it's certainly a valid comment, and we could certainly add that to the contract just so there's no question about it.
I would be surprised if Lofton had any issue with that.
They have not since I've been here in 6.5 years.
The difference between Pine Wild and CCNC in the solid waste issue, what are the differences?
As far as issues?
Yes, issues and vendors and all that. How do they?
So Waste Management services Pine Wild. We presented to you, Jeff Batten and I presented to you a contract for their services 2 years ago, and it was a 4-year contract. So we have a 4-year contract with them that we're about halfway through. We do receive occasional complaints from Pine Wild about the services in Pine Wild. In my opinion, Waste Management has always been very quick to resolve those. They kind of experience the same issues that we have with hydraulic leaks on trucks, and sometimes we have missed pickups. But overall, we're satisfied with their service. In CCNC, like I said, we have 2 separate contractors. We've always renewed their contract every year with the same CPI adjustment, and I received no complaints from them, but they are all contracted out.
What do you consider sort of more efficient, the annual renewal or the 4-year contract? What is there an impact either way, or?
I think maybe next year we should do an extended, maybe not just do a 1-year renewal for CCNC. Like I said, I don't mind coming in front of you every year for this, but I always tell you the same thing, is that they provide excellent service. And you know, if we had an extended contract with them, we could always, I'm sure we would have a termination clause in there if we ever got upset with their
just something to
service.
think about.
Yeah, I think so. But we're satisfied with services in, you know, all the solid waste services that we contract out. It's not without sometimes get complaints and issues, but overall we're satisfied with the services.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Otherwise, we can move to a motion. Hearing none.
I move to approve the solid waste contract for Lofton Garbage Services in CCNC for fiscal year '26, and authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the contract renewal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mike. That includes the ordinances, proclamations, and all that of our regular session. We're at new business. I have one item, which is really not business, but I found this in my inbox the other day. And it was a listing of 2025 of North Carolina's safest cities, and it was done by safest cities, done by an outfit named Safewise. I'm not familiar with them, but they rated us number 4 in the entire state, which is consistent with what the usual ratings we get from a variety of folks. And the only bit of competition from this is that number 3 was Whispering Pines.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put a little pressure on you, Doug, but
I was going to invite you to come commit a felon with me in Whispering Pines, so we can bring that number up.
okay. So anyway, but kudos to our police department, as is always the case. We're always in the top 5, and but I hadn't seen Whispering Pines there before, so I have a call into the mayor. Anyway, that's my new business. Anybody have any other items they'd like to bring up or mention or remind us of?
Something for the strategic planning meeting coming up in December. There's been a big headline here about Amazon coming into Richmond County.
Yes.
That's about a $10 billion commitment, and it's expected to go to about $20 billion total. That's going to affect us here. Okay, we're going to. It's in Hamlet. Talk about increased traffic. We talk about the growth, everything else, but that's huge, absolutely huge. And I just think that ought to be on the radar for Pinehurst Council and to discuss that.
I think that's a good suggestion. It definitely belongs. That's the type of topic that definitely belongs on that list, and we'll take it up. I know it's a build out. I read probably the same articles you did. It's just a build out over so many years that they're going to be adding one football-sized building after another over a 10-year period.
It was 20 buildings, if I remember correctly, and each one's going to be the size of a super Walmart.
So that's pretty big. So that takes some time, and it's good that we start discussing it now, the impact here. Other topics? Anyone want to remind us of? No, Barb? Mr. Taylor? Nope. All right, hearing none,
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
motion is second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's adjourn to, how about 6:45?
5:45.
5:45.
I'm sorry, 5:45.